learning communities, and it's not meant to represent, we're trying to actually change that yellow circle to a square, so it doesn't give the impression that they have to necessarily be located in separate spaces. That decision hasn't been made. So as Scott said, we have a lot of work to do. This first recommendation just gives us a direction, and if we head in this direction, there's a lot more work that has to be done in figuring out how they'd be configured, what would the grade levels look like, maybe what would themes be. We know that the board has made a commitment to new tech, so we know that new tech will be a part of this configuration, but what that's going to look like in the whole compared to other options that we might have, that hasn't been determined. So when I say we're seeking additional people to work on this with us, we really mean that there's still a lot of work to do. So if this sounds like something you're interested in, please let us know, catch one of us, and we would like you to join us because we want to make sure that we make decisions that are going to best represent where we're headed. And then the other thing that we're thinking is that the district has a lot of opportunities to form partnerships, and that the partnerships can also be a way that unifies the work that happens in these learning communities, and it also can vary some of the options that we have. So in thinking about comprehensive versus small learning communities, sometimes there are certain things that you can't do because you can't do everything. But we may be able to partner with people so that we can change some of those barriers, or we can adapt some of those things that can be challenging at times. And I know tonight on the agenda there's a partnership with Washington Community College, and that's one of the things that we were thinking maybe could help us. If we can't provide all the options, some of these partnerships might be able to give us more leverage to do that. Advisories, yeah, our advisory groups. Student advisory groups, yeah. Yeah, and we were thinking that even it gives us great opportunities for representative government, so kids could really learn about this idea that you're representing, because we could be representing like their learning community in different ways than maybe happen in high school, in a comprehensive high school. So we want you to know that there is a lot of research that's been done. So when we talk about the process, outside of meeting, there's been a lot of work that we've been doing to actually look at what does the research say. And the research says that how you implement things is critical. And so that is, if we take this direction, that's the next part of the work that we're really going to have to come back to the board and say, this is what we're going to have to be thinking about if we move to implement in this way. But we want you to know there's a lot of reading that's been done and a lot of research that's been looked at. And so, questions for the board?
So would I be totally out of line if I were to ask if the small learning communities, if you happen to be a big fan of the Harry Potter series, is a little bit like the various houses in the area of Hogwarts?
Well, that's probably a good real life, theatrical real life, what kids can apply to. But yeah, I mean, the idea is that how you can organize and you can structure things that would show you that there are ways that you could do that in the same space. And it kind of shows you the rivalry stuff, the kind of stuff that we want to be careful and very mindful of, that we want strength that can come from a small learning community, but we also want to, at the same time, be very mindful of what downside that could have, because we don't want to create an environment where we don't understand that we're one unified Ypsilanti Community School District, and we're wanting to give kids opportunities to do what's best for them, but we also want to keep this idea that we're one school. We want to be a strong school system.
Are there any schools, school districts in the area that have embraced this SLC model?
Jennifer, you might want to talk about that because you've done a little research, but I would also want you to know that both of these two school systems have embraced this to some degree. We've tried things. So we've tried small learning communities. You've got New Tech at Ypsilanti that's functioning right now. You've got the high school that has some separate, the Global Leadership Academy, the Performing Arts Academy. At one point, both districts were working with multi-age academies. You have the freshman class. So we've tried some modified things here. And what I want to know as board members is that as a parent, when my daughter was placed in a one of those in the multi-age academy that was at IPSI at one point in time as a teacher when I worked in the multi-age environment. What we've seen is that achievement usually goes up, really usually in the first year. I mean, almost all of those examples are that you get in, you focus, you do this work, you build these relationships, you've got a lot of collaboration, and usually achievement, in every instance that I've been involved in, that achievement does go up. The question is then thinking about how we sustain it, how we keep that going. It's a real question that we need to be mindful of, and I don't know at the time in those initiatives, this piece of research with the implementation, I'm not sure we really had our hands on that and paid attention to that. But there's this moment where you're not expecting anything initially because you're right in the middle of doing something, and then it's, oh my goodness, look what happened. So I've experienced that power, but Jennifer, you might want to talk a little bit about, okay, yeah, she's done a little bit of research on
I
where
try
we
to
see
stand back
this too.
because our committee has worked so hard. I wanted them to have the spotlight tonight. Y High is a perfect example of a small learning community, as is community in Ann Arbor. They have small learning communities within one building. So those would be two examples that you have here locally that you could go and examine. But there are quite a few throughout the state of Michigan, and we are seeing an increase in small learning communities.
Now, have you seen districts that have eliminated comprehensive high school and just went wholeheartedly for SL?
Well, I've not seen that in the state of Michigan. Some of the larger districts have eliminated comprehensive high schools and put small learning communities throughout their larger districts. I don't know of a district in Michigan that's completely eliminated small learning communities, no.
There are a lot of examples of comprehensive high schools that have split themselves into 4 parts, or 3 parts, and created within one large school, very discrete learning communities.
Right, and it goes by a lot of different names. Some comprehensive high school call them houses, some call them small learning communities, PLCs, pods, so it goes by a variety of different names.
That was gonna be my question. Skylines,
Yeah.
is that,
They have examples.
Beautiful example.
And the driving force in the research for the reason why schools are trying to do this is it's to take care of student achievement. That there's a recognition that we're not doing a good job of doing what we need to do from an achievement standpoint. And so that's what drives this need to try to do something different. And there's no mistake. We're gonna have to address that. In this new district, we wanna do better from an achievement standpoint.
My research in the small learning communities started many years ago with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And I was awarded a grant to work on a small learning community in a neighboring large urban metropolitan city. Okay? Having said that, I had 300 students housed in a wing of one of their current comprehensive high schools. No admission criteria, simply bring me 300 children. And from that experience, I had a 99% graduation rate. And all of the students were accepted to a 2- or 4-year university. And a lot of that had to do with the personalization. I could tell you the strengths and the challenges of every child in that building. And with the entire staff, we were one. And we met on a very consistent basis to discuss what we needed to support each other, and more importantly, what we needed to support our children. And I still speak to almost all of them.
Part of the heavy lifting is trying to figure out how to make it sustainable, I assume. And so there's other case examples of things you can look at. I would urge you to also look at, if we had fits and starts here, what are those red flags about it stopping, so that we don't make that mistake again, or that we're at least cognizant that here's a flag for us, we better pay a little bit more attention to it, because we don't want it to go 6 months down the road and find out it's not sustainable, maybe financially, or sustainable maybe from an organizational standpoint.
And we did bring up that in conversation. Part of the non-negotiables for the small learning community really could apply to a comprehensive model or any school in the district. We don't want to become married to a particular theme